I remember the day my cousin first walked into my restaurant like it was yesterday. His name was Rohan, my father's brother's son, and he always had that disarming smile and easy confidence. But behind that smile, there was a cunning streak I'd underestimated all my life. Let me tell you a bit about me first. My name is Arjun, and food has always been my passion. I spent years perfecting recipes and saving every penny I could just to open my own little restaurant in the heart of the city. It was a humble place with warm wooden tables and the smell of fresh spices in the air. For me, it was more than just a restaurant. It was a dream made real. My soul poured into every dish, every detail. When I opened it, people said I was crazy. They said the market was too crowded, that big chains would crush me. But I didn't care. I believed in what I was doing, and in the first year alone, I turned a profit I never expected. Customers kept coming back, and soon enough, my restaurant became a place where laughter, good food, and memories were shared. It was everything I ever wanted, but family. Family is complicated. Rohan was always there, drifting in and out of my life like a shadow. Growing up, he was the golden child, the one everyone doted on. He was charming and smart, but he never really worked for anything. Meanwhile, I was the one always hustling, trying to prove I could build something on my own. So, when Rohan showed up at my door one day, asking if he could learn the business, I didn't hesitate. I took him in. I showed him the books, the recipes, the daily grind. I thought he'd stick around for a few weeks, maybe help out a bit before moving on to the next shiny thing. He stayed longer than I expected, asking questions, taking notes, shadowing me in the kitchen. I thought he was genuinely interested, maybe even inspired by what I'd built. It turns out, I was wrong. 3 months later, he showed up one morning, earlier than usual. He had a lawyer with him, and a cold, calculating look in his eyes I'd never seen before. He said the restaurant was his now, that I'd signed papers giving him control. My mind was racing. I didn't remember signing anything like that. But there it was, my signature, clear as day. A document I'd never even read, slipped under the mountain of daily paperwork, and I'd trusted him to help me sort through it. I felt like the walls were closing in on me. My restaurant, my dream, everything I'd poured my life into, stolen right out from under me. Rohan didn't flinch. He didn't even look ashamed. In that moment, the betrayal cut deeper than I ever thought possible. I stood there, gripping the edge of the counter, my hands shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. Anger and disbelief churned inside me like a storm. How could he do this? My own blood. The person I'd trusted more than anyone. That was the day I learned that trust can be a weapon in the wrong hands. And it was the day I realized that Rohan had no idea what he'd truly awakened in me. The days after that betrayal were a blur of disbelief and raw pain. I didn't know how to face my staff, my customers, or even myself. My restaurant, the place I'd poured my soul into, was suddenly his. Rohan had taken it from me with a smirk and a flick of his pen. I tried to hold it together, to keep my mind focused, but every time I walked past the place, every time I saw the sign with my name on it, it felt like a slap in the face. I stopped going in. I couldn't bear to see him there, pretending he belonged. Instead, I sat in my tiny apartment, surrounded by stacks of unpaid bills and memories of better days, trying to figure out how it had all gone so wrong. At night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Rohan. The way he'd watched me work, the questions he'd asked, so innocent at the time. Now I could see the calculation behind every word, every friendly smile. I needed answers. I needed to know how deep this betrayal ran. So I started digging. I went through every document I had, every scrap of paper, every email. I found the contract he claimed I'd signed, a transfer of ownership buried under pages of legal jargon. My signature was there, sure enough, but I had no memory of putting it there. My mind was clouded with frustration and anger. But one thing was clear. He'd planned this. Rohan didn't waste time. Within days, he started making changes. He swapped out my recipes for cheaper versions, cut corners wherever he could. The restaurant still looked the same from the outside, but inside, the heart of it, my heart, was gone. Customers started to notice too. I overheard whispers in the market, old regulars saying it wasn't the same, that something felt off. One evening, I gathered the courage to go inside. I wanted to see it for myself, to see what he'd done to my dream. I stepped in, and it was like stepping into a stranger's home. The walls were the same, but the warmth was gone. Rohan was behind the counter, smiling that same smile he'd always had. He greeted me like an old friend, as if nothing had changed. "Arjun," he said, too loud, too cheerful. "Come in, sit down. Have you tried the new special?" I wanted to throttle him, to scream and tell everyone the truth. But I didn't. I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I sat at a table in the corner, watching as he served plates of food that looked familiar but tasted hollow. I watched him move around the kitchen, barking orders like he owned the place. I watched the staff, my staff, moving like puppets under his command. And I knew I couldn't just sit there and let him ruin everything I'd built. Over the next few weeks, I became a ghost in my own life. I followed him, watched him. I noticed things, small things at first. Deliveries being turned away because he didn't want to pay the full price. My old suppliers replaced, with cheaper ones. He was bleeding the place dry, using my name to fill his pockets. But that wasn't all. There were other signs, whispers among the staff, money missing from the till, ingredients swapped out for cheaper substitutes. He was cutting every corner he could, riding on the reputation I'd built with years of hard work. I tried to talk to the staff, but they were scared. They didn't want to get caught up in family drama. Some of them wouldn't even look me in the eye anymore. One night, after closing, I saw him slip out the back door with a box of expensive wine that I'd been saving for a special occasion. He thought no one was watching, but I was. I followed him down the street, my heart pounding in my chest. He didn't notice me as he loaded the box into his car, whistling like it was the most normal thing in the world. I didn't confront him that night. I wasn't ready. I needed more. I needed proof, not just suspicion. I needed to show everyone, show him, that he'd stolen more than just a restaurant. He'd stolen my name, my pride, my future. But there was something else burning inside me, something stronger than the anger and the pain. It was a quiet, steady flame of determination. I wouldn't let him win. I wouldn't let him erase me from what I'd built. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to take it all back, and I was going to make sure he saw me do it. The more I dug, the more I found. It was like pulling at a thread on a sweater. Every new discovery unraveled another layer of Rohan's deceit. My anger was still there, burning in my chest, but it was becoming something else. It was becoming fuel. One afternoon, I managed to get hold of an old laptop I'd left at the restaurant. I'd used it for everything, recipes, invoices, even personal notes. When I powered it up, I found a folder I didn't remember creating. Inside were scanned copies of contracts, supplier lists, and emails, some of them with my name on them, but written in a tone that wasn't mine. It was subtle, but clear enough if you knew me well. The language was too polished, too rehearsed. Then there were the financial records. Rohan had been skimming money off the top for weeks before he ever took over. Small amounts, just enough to slip under the radar. It was all there, carefully logged and hidden away. I sat there in the dark, staring at the numbers on the screen, my hands trembling with the weight of what I'd found. My first instinct was to confront him, to march in there and shove the evidence in his face. But I stopped myself. I realized that if I did that, he'd just twist the truth again, turn it back on me like he always had. No, this time, I needed to be smarter. I needed to be patient. I started reaching out to old friends in the restaurant business, people I'd met at trade shows, suppliers who'd known me for years. Quietly, carefully, I asked if they'd noticed anything unusual. A few of them were hesitant. At first, no one wanted to get involved in a family fight. But slowly the stories started to come out. One supplier told me Rohan had tried to bully him into lowering his prices, threatening to take his business elsewhere. Another said he'd been paid late, every single month. And there was a former employee who'd left a few weeks ago. She told me in a hushed voice how Rohan had been selling off expensive ingredients and replacing them with cheap knockoffs. It wasn't just betrayal. It was fraud. I knew I couldn't take on Rohan alone. So I reached out to my old mentor, Vikram, a man who'd taught me everything I knew about the restaurant business. Vikram was tough, sharp as a blade, and he hated nothing more than a cheat. We met late one night at a quiet cafe. I laid everything out for him, the forged signatures, the missing money, the staff who were too scared to speak. He listened, his brow furrowed, his fingers tapping on the table. "You've got him, Arjun," he said finally, "but you need to be smart. If you go at him head on, he'll find a way to twist it. You need to show everyone the truth, make it so clear that no one can deny it." I nodded, feeling that flicker of hope deep in my chest. I want him to see that I'm not going to let him bury me. Vikram leaned back, a slow smile creeping across his face. "Good. Let's start by getting every piece of evidence we can. We'll build a case so strong he won't be able to talk his way out of it." So, that's what we did. Over the next few weeks, I became a shadow, slipping in and out of places, gathering copies of invoices, recording conversations when I could. Vikram helped me set up meetings with trusted lawyers, people who could see the patterns in the numbers and the signatures. It was meticulous work, and it took everything I had not to let the anger swallow me whole. Every night, I went back to my apartment and spread the papers out on the table, piecing together the puzzle of Rohan's betrayal. The more I saw, the clearer it became. He hadn't just taken the restaurant. He'd tried to erase me from it completely, but there was something he didn't count on. He didn't count on me fighting back. I started visiting the restaurant more often, just as a customer. I'd sit in the corner, notebook in hand, watching. I saw the corners he was cutting, the mistakes he was making. He thought he was in control, but he didn't realize that every move he made was just another piece of the evidence I was building against him. And slowly, the staff began to see it too. A few of them started coming to me, quietly, telling me what they'd noticed. Small things, like how the orders never matched the invoices, or how Rohan kept changing suppliers without telling anyone. They were scared, but they wanted the truth to come out. They believed in what I'd built, and they didn't want to see it torn apart. I still remember one night in particular. It was late, and I was sitting in the back of the restaurant, nursing a cup of chai. One of the cooks, an old friend named Samir, came over and sat down across from me. He looked tired, worn down by all the lies. "I'm with you, Arjun," he said quietly. "Whatever you need, just tell me." In that moment, I felt the weight of everything I'd been carrying start to shift. I wasn't alone anymore. Rohan had tried to turn everyone against me, but he couldn't kill the loyalty I'd built with honest work and respect. I walked out of there that night with a new resolve. Rohan thought he'd won, but he had no idea what was coming. I was going to show him exactly what happens when you steal from a man who built something with his own two hands. And this time, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. I was becoming the strategist he'd never expected. It was a Thursday evening when I finally decided to make my move. The sun was setting, painting the sky in deep golds and purples, and the streets were alive with the buzz of evening crowds. But inside me, there was only calm, a strange, focused calm that comes when you know exactly what you have to do. I walked into the restaurant like I owned the place, because in my heart, I still did. The dining room was half full, the hum of conversation mixing with the clatter of dishes. Rohan was behind the counter, laughing with a couple of new customers. He looked up when I walked in, and for the first time, his smile faltered. He must have seen something in my eyes, something he hadn't expected. I didn't sit down. Instead, I walked straight to the center of the room, my steps steady and deliberate. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I took a deep breath and raised my voice so everyone could hear. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying over the quiet din of the room. "I need to tell you all a story. It's about this restaurant and about the man who stands behind that counter." Rohan's face went pale. He took a step forward, trying to cut me off. "Arjun, this isn't the time." "No," I said, my voice firm. "It's exactly the time." I pulled out the folder I'd been carrying, a thick stack of papers, emails, and statements. I held it up for everyone to see. "This is proof," I said. "Proof that Rohan didn't build this place. Proof that he didn't create these dishes, these memories. He stole them from me." A hush fell over the room. The customers turned to look at Rohan, confusion and curiosity in their eyes. My staff, my old staff, watched silently from the kitchen doorway, their faces taut with tension. Rohan's jaw tightened. "This is nonsense," he snapped, trying to sound confident. "You're just trying to cause trouble, Arjun. You're bitter because you failed?" I didn't blink. I didn't waver. "Failed?" I said, my voice rising. "You think taking what doesn't belong to you is success? You think signing, My name on papers I never saw makes you the owner of my dreams? I turned to the customers. Look at these, I said, passing around copies of the financial records, the invoices, the emails. See for yourselves how he's been bleeding this place dry, cutting corners, cheating you out of the food and service you deserve. Rohan lunged forward, trying to grab the papers from me. Enough, he hissed. You're ruining everything. I stepped back, just out of his reach. No, Rohan, I said, my voice cold and steady. You ruined it the day you decided my trust was something you could use and throw away. At that moment, Vikram stepped into the room. He'd been waiting outside, a quiet force at my back. He walked over to me, his presence like a shield, and turned to face Rohan. Rohan, he said evenly, these documents have already been sent to the authorities. And to every supplier in the city. You've been exposed. Rohan's eyes widened. He looked from me to Vikram, then to the customers and staff who were now staring at him, some of them whispering, others outright glaring. The weight of what he'd done was settling over him like a shroud. I watched his shoulders sag, the fight draining out of him. He tried one last desperate play. Arjun, we're family, he said, his voice cracking. Don't do this. We can work it out. I felt a pang, some echo of the cousin I'd once known, but it passed in a heartbeat. You chose this, I said. You made your choice when you signed my name and called it yours. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. Finally, he turned and walked out the back door without another word, the door swinging shut behind him with a hollow thud. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a ripple of conversation broke out among the diners, a low murmur of disbelief and sympathy. Some of them stood and clapped me on the shoulder as they left. Others simply nodded, their eyes saying what their mouths didn't need to. I turned to my staff, Samir, Mira, all the others who had stood by me even when they were afraid. Their faces were weary but relieved. Samir stepped forward and gave me a small, proud smile. You did it, Arjun, he said softly. You took it back. I nodded, the weight of the last few months crashing down on me in a wave of exhaustion and triumph. We did it, I said, and now we build it back up the right way. As I stood there, the smell of spices and warm bread filling the air once again, I realized something. This place wasn't just mine because I'd built it. It was mine because I'd fought for it, because I refused to let someone else's greed snuff out the light I'd spent years igniting. And in that moment, I knew Rohan might have tried to steal my restaurant, but he'd never steal what really mattered. Because in the end, it wasn't about the building or the name. It was about the heart that beat in every dish, every smile, every memory. And that heart was mine to reclaim. The days that followed were a whirlwind of consequences and revelations. Word spread quickly. What had happened that night wasn't just gossip. It was the truth finally laid bare for everyone to see. Rohan's betrayal didn't stay confined to my little restaurant. Suppliers cut him off the moment they saw the proof, refusing to do business with someone who'd lied and cheated so brazenly. His name, once spoken with admiration because of our family connection, became a warning. Don't trust him. Don't let him near your work. The whispers turned into open condemnation, and the shame he'd tried to bury me under settled squarely on his shoulders. I filed the paperwork with the authorities. Backed by the evidence Vikram and I had painstakingly gathered, there would be legal action, fraud, misrepresentation, theft. Rohan didn't even try to fight it. He disappeared into the city's back alleys, his phone silent, his charm and quick talk worthless now that the truth had come out. For me, there was a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Relief because I had finally wrestled back what was mine, because the weight of Rohan's betrayal was no longer pressing down on my chest like a stone. Sorrow because it was family. No matter how twisted or lost he'd become, he was still a part of my past. A part of me wished it could have ended differently, that he would have apologized, owned up to what he did. But he didn't. And maybe he never would. The staff returned to me slowly, one by one. Samir was the first, followed by Mira and the rest of the team. They had been there in the trenches, and they understood what it meant to fight for something real. We started cleaning up the mess together, scrubbing away the stains he'd left behind. Every day the restaurant felt a little more like itself again. The laughter returned. The smells of real food, made with love, filled the air once more. Customers who had stayed away began to trickle back in, curious to see if the rumors were true. When they tasted the dishes I'd poured my soul into, I saw it in their eyes. This was the restaurant they remembered, the place they'd trusted. At night, I would stand in the kitchen after closing, just me and the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the scent of spices still hanging in the air. I'd think about everything that had happened, every lie, every late-night doubt, every moment I thought I might lose myself completely. And though there was still a dull ache when I thought of Rohan, I knew it was fading. I had survived. I had reclaimed my dream. There was still work to do, of course. But this time, the work was mine again. The restaurant was more than a business. It was a testament to resilience, to the belief that no matter how deep the betrayal, some things can't be stolen. Some things are woven into your bones. I didn't just get my restaurant back. I found myself again. As the weeks turned into months, I felt the rhythm of my life return, steadier and stronger than before. The restaurant became not just a place to cook and serve food, but a symbol of everything I'd fought to reclaim. With every dish I plated, every satisfied smile I saw from across the dining room, I felt that sense of purpose flow back into me like a river finding its course again. I took my time rebuilding, not just the restaurant, but myself. I reached out to my old suppliers, some of whom had stuck by me, even in the worst of times. I tried new recipes, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. Cooking had always been about love for me, and in the quiet hours before the dinner rush, I rediscovered that love. It was no longer about proving myself. It was about honoring the journey, about savoring every step that brought me back to this moment. My staff changed too. They were no longer just employees, they were family, bound together by the fire we'd walked through. Samir would crack jokes during prep time, the clatter of pans and the warmth of the ovens surrounding us. Mira took on more responsibility, her quiet confidence a reminder of the loyalty we'd built together. We were stronger now, more united. And every night as we turned out the lights and locked the doors, I felt a deep sense of pride in what we'd created together. The legal battles with Rohan played out in the background, but they felt less important as time passed. He was gone, his name no longer a shadow on my heart. The community knew what he'd done, and the weight of that was his to carry, not mine. For me, justice had already been served, not by the courts, but by the simple, everyday act of doing what I loved with integrity and care. I found peace in the small things again, the hiss of onions hitting hot oil, the low murmur of customers sharing a meal, the scent of fresh coriander on my fingertips. It was like rediscovering a part of myself I'd almost lost in the chaos of betrayal and anger. Each day felt like a chance to start fresh, to create something honest and real. In quiet moments, I'd catch myself reflecting on how far I'd come. There was still a trace of sadness when I thought of Rohan, not because I missed him, but because I saw how far he'd fallen. I realized I couldn't carry that weight anymore. I had my own life to live, and I chose to live it with purpose, with the kind of authenticity that no one could steal from me. I started mentoring a few younger chefs, sharing not just my recipes, but the lessons I'd learned about trust, betrayal, and the quiet strength of resilience. I wanted them to know that the restaurant business, like life itself, wasn't just about skill or ambition. It was about heart, about fighting for what mattered and never letting someone else's lies define who you are. On the nights when I finally sat down at the end of a long shift, the weight of exhaustion in my bones felt good. It was an honest kind of tired, one that came from hard work and passion, not from fear or betrayal. And when I looked around at the place I'd rebuilt, I knew it wasn't just a restaurant. It was a testament to everything I'd learned, to the quiet, stubborn flame that kept me going when everything else seemed lost. I wasn't the same person I'd been before Rohan's betrayal. I was stronger, wiser. I knew now that trust is something you earn every day, that family is more than blood. It's the people who stand by you when the world goes dark. And I knew, deep in my bones, that no one could ever take that away from me again. Looking back now, I realize that betrayal isn't always a single, sharp blow. Sometimes it's a slow, insidious creep, a trusted hand that slips a knife between your ribs while smiling in your face. But here's what I learned. It doesn't matter how hard you fall or how deep the wound goes. What matters is that you stand up again. What matters is that you don't let the betrayal define you. Rohan took my restaurant, my trust, my dreams, and tried to claim them as his own. For a moment, I thought he'd succeeded. But in the end, I discovered that he could never steal what truly mattered: my spirit, my determination, my belief in the power of honest work, and the quiet, stubborn heart that refuses to quit. I learned that resilience isn't about never breaking. It's about finding the courage to put yourself back together, piece by piece, even when everything feels lost. It's about understanding that your worth isn't measured by the lies others tell about you, but by the truth you hold in your own hands. Justice, I realized, isn't always swift or easy. Sometimes it's built in small, patient steps, in the records you gather, the conversations you have, the unwavering resolve you carry. And sometimes it's in the quiet moment when you stand in the place you've reclaimed and feel, finally, that it's yours again. I don't know what Rohan will do with the rest of his life, but I know what I'll do with mine. I'll keep building, keep cooking, keep creating spaces where people feel welcome and nourished. Because in the end, that's what this has always been about. Feeding not just the body, but the soul. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this: your dreams, your hard work, your truth. These are yours to protect. No matter how clever the thief or how sweet the lie, no one can take away what you've earned with your own two hands and your own brave heart. So, hold on to that. Hold on to your truth like it's the most precious thing you own, because it is. And remember, even in the face of betrayal, there's always a way back to yourself.